believe teams as one of the areas that we are going to work on.
Right. So it's 2:45, eliminating waste. Is that how you can go out on the lobby and talk about something else? So that's an emergency lane. So when you put something there, that's like an indication to the speakers that something is going wrong there. Okay? Or it's okay to do that. So don't feel threatened by if you feel to write something there and someone will say,
we partner up with someone like ThoughtWorks or Solutions IQ, and they help us be agile. And you get this early momentum, but then maybe those consultants go away. Maybe we stop working with that company and we plateau. Change is hard. Change doesn't stick. So we go back to the way we used to do things. Now, over time, what we see is this concept of, well, we go back to what we used to do. Oh, let's bring the consultants back in. But maybe not as heavy, not as intense. And then we go back. I've seen these companies go through this roller coaster. We try something, it works for a while, and then we kind of go back. We try something else, it works for a while, and we go back. But we don't really get to be more agile. Now, one of the things I'm seeing with this type of company, or these types of companies, is the approach we take. What I said at the beginning, Scrum, Kanban, that's usually the first entry of Agile. Let's do Scrum. And what does Scrum say? Scrum says, put in Scrum, have a Scrum Master that identifies impediments, and then fix the impediments. Sounds easy. The problem is many of those impediments are rooted inside that organization. They're structures. They're like, well, we have an India component and we have a US component. Where I have a security team that doesn't allow me to make changes every 2 weeks. Where I have a database team that prevents, or I have a service level agreement that says I need a contract to make a change. A lot of these are what we call structural impediments. That a Scrum Master can't change those. So what happens? We put Scrum in, we identify the impediments, but we can't fix them. Well, no wonder we start to thrash. No wonder we start to hit a wall. It's like these Scrum Masters are kind of like banging their head against the wall and are tired of it. We're not changing. Right? So what happens is we put the process in. The process works a little bit, but it runs into the wall and it can't penetrate the structural, the deep changes. Now, most of those structure changes come from what we call culture. Now, these are the principles of the company. Culture is essentially the values of a company. So, for example, if a company values predictability, likely they're going to have a PMO that's going to make sure we are predictable. That's going to make sure we have schedules that we meet, right? Because those are values. Or if we have a value of quality, I'm going to have a department of quality that's going to make sure we have quality. I'm going to have quality processes that make sure we follow that quality. Even if I have a new way of doing it, that quality department likely won't go away. So what happens is this outside-in approach, starting with process, bumps into immovable wall. There are companies that are different. There are companies that are out there that are sustaining, are growing, are becoming more agile, are becoming leaner in their approach in how they work. Okay? These companies have taken a different approach, and that's what I want to share with you, this inside-out approach. They've used their culture to drive agility, not the other way around. They haven't used agility to try to push the culture. Okay? So, where are we? Pace of change is increasing. We know that. CEOs want it. We know that. Okay? The thing is, it's hard. We know that too. So the key is we need to leverage culture. We need to leverage who we are as a company. And my pitch here, don't start with Kanban. Don't start with Scrum. Start with the principles of agility, the principles of lean that are going to drive your organization more effectively that we can align to. So what I want to do is I want to share 3 companies that have done this. McKinsey & Company's IT organization, which is represented here. Kanchan's here from McKinsey, and Joe is going to be here from McKinsey talking. We have a couple of people from McKinsey. They're distributed throughout US and India here. Salesforce.com is the leading CRM manufacturer today in customer relationship management. And GE, specifically GE Healthcare, GE Energy, who has a large presence here in Bangalore. Let me share a little bit about these companies. What are they doing from a principal perspective, an inside-out perspective that's not Scrum, it's not Kanban, but it's quite agile? Okay? If we look at McKinsey, it's what we call a creative culture. What does that mean? Their culture is all about freedom, flexibility, self-organization. It's a very fluid and organic culture. You don't see this culture very much in large companies. You don't see this culture very much in healthcare or banking or military or defense or government. But you do see this company quite a bit. I do see quite a bit of creative, especially newer companies. A Google, you'll see a creative culture. Okay? It's focused on people and growth. Now, McKinsey had challenges. Even as a creative culture, McKinsey has challenges, or they had challenges. All companies do have challenges. But back in 2007, when I started working with McKinsey, they had really long cycles, like most of us. They had inconsistent product quality, like many of us do. And they had some costs that were just killing them. And in 2008-9, there was a big drop in the U.S. consulting market, which forced them to think more lean. Over the course of about 5 years, they've reduced their time to market of their projects by 75% from their defect at the same point have been reduced in their delivery. Their development costs have gone down by 60% and their support costs by almost 80%. Now, how do they do this? They didn't do it by just doing Scrum. What they did is they took the principles of Lean and Agile, and specifically they have what we call an agility team. They called it working software. We need to create working software. What did that mean for them? Well, for them, that meant integrating their value stream. All right, in Lean, we talk about the value stream map, and where's waste in our value stream? Well, they recognize there's a lot of silos in their organization. Even though they're a creative company, there was a lot of silos between IT and dev, between QA and dev, between even things like the Scrum Master.
And became number one.
So, the problem is I don't have any really large companies you would know about. I've got a number of companies that are smaller companies that fit this. And even inside GE, so every company, the large ones, will have subcultures. And so even inside GE, we've seen 2 divisions inside GE that have a collaborate culture. And these are medical companies. So, and those are both in Germany. Okay, and so it's not necessarily maybe the best example would be Southwest Airlines in the United States. Southwest Airlines is a people airline. Every commercial highlights their people. It doesn't highlight what they do, right? So they value people. They value kind of their employees in a sense. But that's the best I can do from kind of a known company that you might know.
We spoke about leadership percentages.
Yes.
The achievers 80%,
Yes.
catalyst 10%. Where do the rest 10% stand?
So there are dimensions both above and below. This is what's called a leadership maturity model. You will see some pre-expert leaders, typically not in our field. You would see that maybe in construction or other disciplines where the leaders are not even the experts in what they're doing. They're just kind of put in a position. And you do see there are some maturity levels beyond Catalyst, but we were just focusing on the main key parts of the model.
So I want to mention, so Pete,
Solutions IQ will help you provide team-based training and coaching. We're doing certain aspects, and then I'll work with the leadership teams. Yeah. In fact, I'm here. I did a couple of days of training at New Delhi with McKinsey this week, and then next week I'll be doing about 4 days of training with GE. What's that? No, these are all private. So all my workshops, all my work is private client. I'll do public seminars, public conferences, but I
I'll simply say what you said this morning, this is an example of that. Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's a nice crowd. Yeah, well, this is good. I'm going to do
then I went to my okay. I like, I really started with me calling. They're like, कहाँ पर हो? and he doesn't know Hindi अच्छे से, he doesn't know English. And
It's like broken.
And he's broken. I'm like, कहाँ पर हो? He's like, मैम ये मेरे को कुछ समझ नहीं आया. मतलब मैं फोकसिंग बैक हो गया, मुझे बताओ. अभी तो मुझे टेक्स्ट करो, मैं बैक कर दूँगा. And he didn't text me. थोड़ी देर बाद मैंने देखा, there is like 5 minutes down. And थोड़ी देर बाद I just went out, and there was this people with levels and class and everything who were crying. We again got it. कहाँ पर हो? मैम मैं ये मैंने कहा यार I'm very दूर से रहेगा. कहाँ पर हो? This guy like doesn't know it.
And especially Bangalore airport, इतना दूर है city से, that if you do not go to the city, you'll actually feel that he's taking you for a treat. Like he can घुमा रहा है आपको. Not really go to the park.
So I was like, if I take it.
We might not survive or the GE, which is like
I'm actually associating myself.
You guys do that.
We introduced a product.
I think we're kind of different phase. And there's kind of like the levels. It's kind of like and the others is kind of different levels. The only I think when you kind of start out, you kind of have to find where you're I think this platform you can really integrate the market. Very strong. We have done some work. Not
principles that were fitting within agriculture. So first of all, these are guiding principles. And I use the term guiding principles simply to mean this, is that when you need to make a decision, that you can go a little bit in one direction or you can go a little bit in the other direction. So when making a decision, these guiding principles will nudge you a little bit more towards an agile principle than perhaps a traditional principle. That's what's meant by a guiding principle. Now these guiding principles, we want to design them to be fractal in nature. And I think many of us are familiar with the idea of what a fractal is, drawn from our study of nature. A pattern that is repeated at many, many different levels of scale through some natural phenomena. In this case, it's a river, but it could be a tree, the branching of a tree, or the roots. It could be many, countless examples. So in our case, when we talk about guiding principles, agile principles, and apply them to an organization, what we're talking about is that they apply at all levels of scale. Is that they could apply for the overall broad business strategy. They could apply how a team organizes their work, or it could be as simple as writing a 5-minute email. many different levels of scale have a fractal quality. The same principle can apply at all levels. We also want to borrow from our study of nature the idea of simple rules. Simple rules is this idea that organization at the broader system level automatically emerges when the agents or the components of the system operate, sometimes just by applying simple rules. So for example, the famous example of geese flying, they obey three simple rules. One of them is fly about the same speed. The other try to fly closely together, but don't collide. And when the agents, the individuals apply this, what happens is we get this nice organization at the system level. So the idea here then is that when we design these principles to be simple rules, then first of all, you don't need to have a lot of training to figure out how to apply them. They're just obvious. As soon as you hear what they are, you know what to do. And the idea is that when the individuals in an organization apply these principles at the different levels of the organization, what emerges is what we would call more of an agile culture. That's the organization at the next level. So today, we're not going to have time to go over all of these. I'm going to try to get through about 5 of them today. And basically, we're just doing a brief introduction. But these are really what they are. And in us working together to come up with these, what we're trying to do is choose very simple, clear language that is drawn from our learnings from Agile and Lean, and that these then can work together as a system themselves. When we apply these rules together as a system, what we believe emerges is an Agile organization. So the first one is grow open networks of diverse voices. Now the idea here is that the network structure, people organizing themselves, apply to any kind of stakeholder. It could be employees in the company, it could be customers, it could be partners, it could be suppliers. And the idea is that what we want to do is make networks available, invite people to join, and also make them a safe place to be. Because what we're interested in doing is encouraging the minority voices and the diverse voices to say what they have to say. And because the reason that this is so important is that with this rapid change that Keith was talking about this morning, is that we really have no way to gather all the knowledge that we need to be successful and do it right the first time. Therefore, we have no choice but to go outward where we are and ask others. And then we need to bring this network into bear and into place so that we can learn from them and learn from the voices. So that's the key reason for why we want to do this. And another key reason is that it has to do with our whole idea of what we mean by knowledge. Many of us are familiar with talking about explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge. Explicit knowledge being codified knowledge, written factual knowledge, tacit knowledge being understanding that we have in our minds. So more and more and more in the world that we live today, the latencies that are involved and the loss of information, of taking things that people know and putting it in written form, there's so much information lost, and so much latency brings in the system that the value is reduced. We might think about it as like a perishable commodity. If it was like fresh fruit, it would start to decay in terms of its value. And for us, knowledge is like a perishable commodity. So what's our alternative? Is we have living networks of people. That's our data repository. That's our information resource. That's our knowledge repository. What we do is tap right in to the living brains of humans that make up part of our culture.
Just to fill out forms, it is a very complicated market response system in the sense that the way the cable TV was sold is if you purchased the Hindi channels plus the sports channels, we'll give you a 5-10% discount on it. But then you suddenly add a Chinese channel to it, on the whole number will give you 2 more channels free. Very convoluted marketing deals that are being sold. This got past a whole ton of red tape. The CEO saw this, the head of sales, she saw this and said, you know what, I'll give you X amount of money, take it, give me something like this. And then we do the whole agile and lean business where we try to build stuff incrementally every week, we release software, we make sure, so we actually identified who our users were. We figured out if it was old timers, they already figured out how to game the system. So we went after all the newbie users who weren't trained, and we gave them the software so that they could improve their productivity. And then we measured productivity differences, they were able to sell more. Then it keeps validating the fact that the product needs to exist. Then obviously the project got a lot more funding, took it to a much larger scale than what it is right now. But these kind of approaches, even in enterprise, are very relevant. If you don't do this, you'll get drowned out in red tape. If you're not a part of this large omnibus budget that goes in, then you're left out. So this whole combination of validate your learning, the multiples of MVPs, and then finally launch it as an MMP, which is 1 or 2 weekly iterations that keep going out. It's hugely valuable for most managers. It's kind of safe for your job. You're not putting too much of risk on it. You can easily find out whether you're going the right direction or not. Yeah, so big thing is early monetization opportunity. Lets us figure out if someone's ready to pay. Because our early users are, like we found out, going after the senior sales people wasn't useful to us. Going and finding people who were not good at their jobs and helping them made a big difference to us. There are various ways of doing potential MVPs. The surveys is the most old time-tested manner. People use surveys even now to find out what needs to be done. There's a sign-up page like buffer.com. We put a sign-up, you find out who's interested. The payment prototyping, like I showed you. Social media is another nice way of doing it. So enough much people know about Airtel Money. This was almost a non-existent product. So what Airtel did was they said, we have this concept called Airtel Money, and put it up on Facebook and told people, you guys tell us what it should be. They had a general idea that people will want to do something around Airtel Money, something with that concept. What it was, they let crowdsource it, get the ideas from them. Now, they didn't go live with it, they didn't do anything with it, but they at least have that treasure trove of information as to what people want. Similarly, to explain the videos what Dropbox did. So the concierge MVP is where people, actually you must have heard of this washing machine thing, where they were trying to figure out if people would like their washing machine done in their house. So this guy was actually drive up to your house with a washing machine in the back of the truck, wash your clothes for you and give it back to you. These kind of things, where there is no, when you're actually going, or should I build an iPhone? When you're trying to do that leap of faith, this reduces that leap of faith by a very large leap. It's a much smaller one. Good.
But pretty much, we want to be building. Yeah. So then we get exact idea that this is the way to go.
Absolutely. Paper prototypes. We took that to them, and it was surprising what the message was. There was some set of people who were saying that don't change most of the old stuff because that hurts our training cost. Just give us what it was. There was some other set of people who were saying that we are anyway rewriting it. Why don't we use it for making a huge leap, sea change which will make us get us up to speed on the world right now. At least that discussion broke out at that point, and we did realize there were two completely different camps. So what I'm trying to drive at is the assumption that if a legacy system existed and every stakeholder in the world or around that legacy system wants the same thing, may be something that is worth being questioned. And sometimes it may not turn your right. Maybe it is exactly what they want. They said, you know what, here's an old mainframe system, build it exactly as in client server software. So be it. But when most people do that, and this being my experience, is that these products die. Because what happens is, business is very rarely interested in BAU. For them, it's business as usual. They are, if I'm going to put $10 million in something, what more am I getting is what they're always looking for. And my sad experience has been that almost all of these have died in my project. This one, they'll run for a year or so and they end up bad, gory death. And then someone else after 6 months will come back and try to redo it in a different way. What really seems to work is when they completely say, okay, we want all these new features, my business has changed and gone here, I want to fix this, and let's drag the old platform to make it work. That's whatever product you're building. The product is something that meets a need. Maybe it's lets you buy cabbages sitting in your office. That's your product need. Whether it does it online, whether it does it over your phone, whether it's an IVR system, those are your features. So MVP is supposed to tell there is a need, and there is a mechanism that people want to use to get this need fulfilled. We stop at that. The minimal viable marketable products is something you then start figuring out what makes most sense.
Minimal marketable features is
yes, that is marketable features that exist in a product that get fed in by the various experiments that you run. You say that we know that there is this need product, like the iPhone. using a touch screen, using a phone and a computer at the same time was what needed validation. Whether it can do copy paste was not necessary, so they dropped it. So that validation has to always happen.
Before particular thing. When I say you are validating a need in terms of getting a customer or getting the revenue out of it. So what are the different directions where I have to look at that particular need, validate that?
If you are doing a pure B2C thing, which you have a lot of things in your control, let's say you're a Dropbox, validating need and how much people are willing to pay would be something that needs validation, right? There might be people who are willing to pay 10 cents for doing something, but then having 10 cents, you need X number of customers for you to be successful, and that may not be a valid business model for you. Another times for us, for the cab drivers, for instance, we knew there was a company that believed that there is a need for this app that lets you book cabs and during rainy days. They had their need validated. But the business model didn't rely on that. The business model relied on being a broker. Brokers have two ends, customer as well as the service provider. Until we had gone and validated on the service provider and make sure that works or not, we could not tell. So that validation also was necessary. So it very much drives upon where you sit and how your business is modeled. The big way to look at it is chart out all your stakeholders. People who are consuming, people who are producing, people who are your partners, and figure out what is the assumption, what is the leap of faith assumption you're making on each end. And is there something I can do to make sure that I'm doing the right thing? Maybe you're believing that there is some warehousing guy who will give you the warehouse for a specific price. Find a mechanism to actually validate if that is true. Maybe it does not actually just be a phone call, that's fine. Maybe it's a contract you write to this person. But make sure it's there. The assumptions is just to drive out the ambiguity away from your business model.
Sean, I'm going to stay for a while with us today. Yeah. So is it okay if we do that? Okay. So thanks, Sean. That was a good session. So also thanks for switching overnight. I know you didn't know about this up until recently, right? Oh. So thanks for doing that for us. So how about a little bit of applause for him? I think he did a good job. The pen. Instead of Jim Tremlett, JP will be talking about there's something called Kanban. Okay, some of you may know Kanban. So JP is going to be talking about kickstarting Kanban teams in large-scale agile transformations. Okay, to write that down. So wherever there is enterprise lean startup, scratch it and write kickstarting Kanban in large-scale agile transformations in that room. Okay. Here, next topic is by Balaji, and so we'll start around 11:20, and then you can probably break and get back here by 11:15 or so if you're interested in this topic. So Balaji is here, so please come back soon for this.
Return on investment, and there are about 50% of the projects which requires significant rework. So this is a statistic, that we all need to think about, because it shows that there is a lot of scope, in terms of some certain basic things that we need to do right, so that we can reduce the rework. And reducing this rework can create a significant competitive advantage and customer delight. So that is the reason, why I have named the topic this way. So without much ado, let me just get down a little bit into what I'm going to talk about today. So we are going to talk about a project where we had implemented a set of lean principles or lean techniques. And I'm going to talk about those lean techniques in terms of why they were required, what was actually done, and what were the benefits that we got from implementing that. So I'm going to talk about 5 things. So some of these things you might be already aware, like visual controls, mistake proofing, and there are also certain other things like DSM and OA. DSM is Design Structure Matrix. So it was a concept which was pioneered by Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT as we know it, and it is a tool for dealing with engineering complexity. So there is a whole set of tools and artifacts which is available at the MIT site, which can be used to a good advantage, and it has been used by organizations like Boeing, which are into the most complex modes of software development. And the other thing that I'm going to talk about is more of a Six Sigma tool, but which can still be used, to a significant advantage with respect to eliminating waste, in testing. So we will be talking about orthogonal arrays, which I call as OA, and then we'll be talking about the benefits that the project achieved. And I have a few points to share in terms of the closing thoughts, in terms of the way forward. So that is the agenda. So let me just cut a little bit into the project context. So we were looking at an application development project, which was more of an incremental development. So we were not looking at a development from scratch here, but we were looking at adding certain features to an already existing code base, which was pretty huge. And this particular functionality had to be rolled out to 5 states in the USA, spanning 2 different releases. So that is about the project. When we started looking into what were the business and the technical challenges, see, some of these things would be things that you would be already familiar with. So we found that there were a lot of modules which were getting impacted because of this feature development, and there was a high degree of dependency between these various modules. And we were also looking at reusing some portion of the code from the previous releases, which also brought in some amount of added complexity. So when you start making some changes to an existing large system, even small incremental changes, you always have the risk of making that system unstable. So it is like adding one more card to a pack of cards which has been stacked like a pyramid, right? So the entire system could collapse. So there was a risk in doing that. And there were also a large number of data combinations that we had to use for testing, which is where this concept of orthogonal arrays becomes relevant. And there was also, this was again, not something that we were doing for the first time. We had been working for this customer for multiple releases, and the customer was not happy with the code quality or the quality of the deliverable.